Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host. Welcome back to the A Better Way to Farm podcast. I'm your gracious co-host, Tyler, National Field Agronomist for the team. We always mention that we spend each and every day providing solutions for farmers to grow better crops and to make more money, which in this day and age with the price of commodities is always something that seems to bend an ear a little bit. We always get growers reaching out saying, hey, how can I be more profitable with my operation? And this interview that we've got, it's another fun and inspiring interview. A gentleman that I've become to know in just a short amount of time has become a great friend. And we wanted to invite him on so that he could share his story. He is another client from Wisconsin. I know that we just did an interview with a gentleman and his family farm up in that neck of the woods. And this guy and that gentleman don't farm too far apart, and they have some similar stories, but some different stories, which is fantastic. He runs a family farming operation and a successful seed business, which is where I kind of hailed from. And I learned, I'm pretty sure, and I'll have to ask him about it when he jumps on here, that he just transitioned to another seed brand. He has a tremendously successful program with us in just a short amount of time. And I'd like to welcome him in today, Mr. Rick Gehrke. Thanks for joining us today, man. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so I hope that I'm right. Did I see that you just transitioned from one seed brand to another? You don't have to mention who they are or anything like that, but
I've been doing it 10 years now in the seed business and was with a local regional company and recently just made the transition to more of a national seed brand. So pretty excited for the opportunity.
Yeah, that is going to be fun. That's one of the things that I don't know if I miss the seed side or not. There's days where I miss it and there's days that I don't. And,
Yep.
I'm glad that I did my time. And yeah, I'm very thankful for.
If there's one thing that I love to learn, I was never one to be, I'm not a school person, never really was, but I love learning when it comes to farming, and when I started in the seed business, the amount of stuff agronomy wise and you name it that I've learned has just been priceless.
Yep. The line that I steal from Denny all the time is he used to say, still says it, that if you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you rot. And to me, that is something, especially this year, that's something that I need to go out and do more. I've talked with Sam and Preston, Rod, some of the people that and that to me is kind of something I need to go kind of above and beyond and continue my learning as well. Because when you get out of the co-op retail environment, or then I got out of the seed business, I'm out of the chem business now, this is all that I do. I need to get back in there so that I can continue to learn. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Another thing I would ask you to do, I hope that I did a decent enough job with my introduction. Rick, if you would, just real quick, kind of clue us in on a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do up there in Wisconsin.
Yes, I am the fourth generation for our farm. I pretty much came back to the farm in 2011, but obviously we were a dairy farm from the time I was born up till I think 2002. That we milk cows like many others in Wisconsin, but
I think it's a rite of passage, isn't it? If you live on a farm in Wisconsin, you're definitely a dairy farmer.
Yeah, dairy farmer and cheese curds.
Yep.
No, we're a high no-till operation, pretty big on the soil health and cover crops, you name it. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat, winter cereal, rye, and alfalfa. So we try to balance and mix the crop rotation up a little bit.
I just did a podcast with a gentleman named Ryan, and he is kind of a cover crop expert, lives down Southeast Iowa, kind of by Rod. He said some pretty cool things and some stuff that I think that you already do, and some of the things that I think you're going to love. and can share with some of the clients that you work with. That's one of the things I love about cover crops is that I think we are on the side of mineralizing more out of your soil, just keeping that soil microbiology healthy and active.
Mm-hmm.
And, if there's some benefits, some carbon credits, or maybe some dollars that comes with it, that's fantastic. But I think we all understand why we're actually doing it. And it's not just, because it's the pretty new thing to do.
And the crazy thing is I know there's some experts out there that claim they know a lot about the soil health and the relationship into the systems approach of, less tillage and all the mycorrhizal fungi and not to get into the weeds too much there, but we're just at the tip of the iceberg. And I'm excited to know what they can discover and what they can come up with in the next even 20 years from what they know now. But there is a lot to be learned there in regards to soil health and fertility and how it relates to the soil health and which products you do use and how that all interacts with each other.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. It's one of the things that I don't really talk a lot about, but I am passionate about. It's one of the reasons why I'm here with A Better Way to Farm is that when I had the opportunity to come on board, I've said this a million times, I don't farm. I have a very small sweet corn patch that I try to take care of. But, just farming at the time just wasn't in my cards, but I was passionate about agriculture. And the things that made sense to me was soil health. And if you could do things to increase soil health, whether you are on, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like the mono cropping, the season of corn and then the season of soybeans or whatever, they want to see some interseeding or multi cropping and all that stuff. To me it's more just about soil health in general.
Yep.
And you've got to find kind of this happy medium between your cash crop and that cover crop that you're using to kind of continue to help that growth. So along those lines, Rick, like you mentioned it, you have been kind of with us for the last couple of years, but really ultimately this is kind of your first initial deep dive into A Better Way to Farm and the program. What has been kind of your experience to this point, and what was that major push that made you reach out? There's a lot of people on our social media platforms. Maybe they're listening to the podcast. Maybe they follow Rod on Facebook or something. But what was it for you that you said, you know what, I'm going to reach out to these guys. I've got to do something different.
Kind of a funny story, but I was looking for something. So obviously, like I said, soil health's pretty big for me. You talk to or you listen to a lot of the long-term soil health regenerative ag people, and they have, was there 5 principles, if I remember right, which I'm doing most of them, but the only one that I do not have on my farm, and we haven't since 2005, is livestock. They like to see that livestock integrated back on the ground, and it just makes the whole system kind of work that much better. And what I was seeing, in my no-till operation, and I think Marion Calmer is probably one of them that come out recently and said, is the soil stratification, where that top inch or two are very, very potent, and we've been doing no-till here for 24-ish, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine what our top inch or two is like.
Yes.
And the products that I was using, if you start doing a lot of reading, and whether that's, listening to Rod and a lot of the books that he reads and he mentions in his podcast, take potash or potassium chloride, for example, and how bad that is for your soil. And I knew that, but I never really knew that there was anything else out there that, without putting livestock or manure back on the ground, that there was products out there that would be a lot safer and a lot easier on your soil in regards to soil health than what, the products that I was buying from the co-op.
Yep.
So, and I started with a different company. I was playing around with some of their products and thought they were going to be the answer. And after being encouraged to send some samples of those products in, realized that they weren't really all cracked up to what they were telling me they were.
Yep.
And at the time, I was just starting to listen to some of the podcasts and videos Rod was putting out, and it just really intrigued me of what he had to say. And he was talking about the same things that I was trying to research on my own and really trying to find answers for. And he kind of just, the light bulb went off in my head, like, man, this is exactly what this guy's talking about is what I've been trying. So I attended the fundamentals of agronomy, 2 years ago, and there's a lot to take in a matter of 2 days. But I came back and I started using and integrating a lot more micronutrients into my rotation and in my liquid starter, and dabbling a little bit with foliar feeding. And then last year I did more of them, and then now this year I actually had you come out and soil test my ground last fall, and this year was my first year where I put the full system in place. And granted, we had a lot of rain this spring, and obviously you're not going to mitigate the amount of damage when it comes to excess water, but in the areas that did not have those wet spots and whatnot, my crops look pretty darn good.
Yeah, I have heard we did have a field day not too far from you. I was unfortunately I wasn't able to get up there, but obviously
it rained that day too.
Yeah, I know we missed out on it. It started the day before and kind of side skirted us and ended up going up to Minneapolis, and there's some pretty big storms up there, and then kind of blew over into your neck of the woods. And yeah, I wish we could catch a few more rains down here. But as you look at some of the things, because we get growers, I was literally just asked the other day by someone that said, "Hey, I listened to all your podcasts and you say this and this and this, and here is what I'm doing. Can you make recommendations?" And I love people to death, but it's one of the things, Rick, that you got to reach out and you got to get in so that you can truly see what we're about. Would you agree with that?
I would agree 100%. Before jumping on with Better Way to Farm there, I was experimenting with some other labs, regionally, locally, and there's nobody out there that gives you an fully in-depth results and dive into your soil like, Midwest Labs does, or the results you get back from Midwest Labs or you guys. And it tells you down to the ounce or part of an ounce of each product that you should use. And they're not, why put it on if you don't have to, where you have, and I was a big one for foliar feeding previous, ZMB is a big one, right? So,
yep.
They have it all mixed in one jug. Well, if you don't need zinc and you just need boron, well, yeah.
I'm going to bring this up because I used to sell that way back in the day when I was in the co-op system. I worked for both of them that were tied in with Winfield. Now it's Winfield United, I think.
Yep.
But Max in ZMB was huge, and if we
still is in this area.
And the crazy thing is, and what we know, Rick, and maybe I should just go off of your soil tests. There is no way that if you apply the proper amount of boron that's in ZMB, that you are not over applying the manganese and the zinc, correct?
100% agree. Yep.
Yeah. And because of what we know, I mean, if you need boron, you need boron. And that's the other thing, is that those nutrients, micronutrients, are also needed at different times, at different rates. And especially boron's not going up into that plant. When you apply it at V3, it's not going to be there, when everything's pollinating, when the flowers are pollinating on the soybeans or the alfalfa or the corn silks are out, so it's interesting that, even though some of these retailers are out there trying to come out with that one silver bullet and say, "Oh, yep, this is going to cure all your ills," that we know that that's not the right way. And it doesn't make sense until you jump on board with us, you come join the team. And yeah, you do have to take 2 days out of your week to come to a fundamentals of agronomy program. But ultimately, it's a lot different than any other ag program out there or ag seminar that you go to. So Rick, after that, you came in, you spent the 2 days with us, and you started to kind of retrain your brain, reprogram everything, take a look at some different products. What did your season kind of look like? What were some of the agronomy practices that may have changed or some of the more important things that kind of arose from that 2-day event?
I went to a per farm, and actually I've kind of taken it even down to almost a per field prescription of what I put on with my planter and what I really put on per fertilizer, even though I used to do that before, but it was all dry fertilizer minus my liquid starter on my planter. So now where I'm pulling into, say, a 100-acre field and I might need 3 pints of boron, 1 pint of manganese, 0 zinc, and maybe I'm really low on calcium. So I'm throwing some calcium out there versus the field on the other side of the fence row might have something completely different. And if there's one thing that I'm still trying to perfect, and obviously I'm still learning, it's still a lot to take in, but when you can put out there what that plant needs, that plant is so much healthier. And as time goes through the season, it's actually fun to watch. When you are applying what that plant needs and it absorbs it, it's amazing how much healthier that is. Even right now, there's a lot of corn that's starting to dry up in the area and fire up from the bottom. And, I have corn out there that's green from top to bottom and that was planted before that other stuff, but it's just that much healthier and it's hanging on to that plant health.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, that what we do actually also works for the seed that you sell?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
make that
right.
joke. I make that joke all the time. We've got some slides that we
Yep.
show in that 2-day event, and it happens to be brand specific. And I always make that joke. I always say, "Yep, see, look, it even works on that brand."
Right. To be honest, I think fertility and the way you treat your soil is way farther ahead, focusing on fertility and your soil than you are hybrid of seed. I mean, yes, certain hybrids are important for geographic location, this and that, but no matter if it's the best seed that's new out of the gate that year or a seed that's 5 years old or a hybrid that is 5 years old, you're better off focusing on getting your soil and your fertility program set up than you are worrying about the newest, greatest hybrid that's out there.
Well, and the crazy thing is that, I've mentioned this a million times before, but I did spend some time in the seed world. And when you look at what we do with improving soil health and also plant health, a lot of I used to hate the terminology, but I'm going to use it. A lot of the quote unquote racehorse hybrids would have some flaws. I mean, they were always top end yield, and that was your bin buster, whatever the stupid lingo that the district sales manager would come out and tell you it's the best new thing since sliced bread. That was the deal. Oh man, it's great yield, but plant health, but stock strength. And now you can take those hybrids, and when you feed them the right amount of nutrients, not too much of one thing and not enough of another, when you start feeding those plants a balanced diet, now all of a sudden you can take those racehorse hybrids, and with the inputs and the management that you're adding to the program, now all of a sudden you're taking your dollar and maybe you're spending a few more dollars per acre input wise. Maybe you're spending a little bit more, but ultimately your net return is far, far lower than what you were spending before. And you can even take the guys that are just hitting the easy button. No, I'm gonna have the co-op put the gas on and put the variable rate dry P and K and go out there with the workhorse because it always gets me 170 bushel corn with just a little bit of management. Now all of a sudden you can push 250, 260, and even greater.
Yep. 100%. Even if you're looking at a younger farmer, if he wants to grow or he wants to get more acres, I guess one advice I would always give those people is look at what you have first and get more out of those acres and take that money you would make out of those acres and expand.
Yes, I absolutely love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. I couldn't agree more. Now, going back to Rick, you mentioned kind of prior to joining the team, you would do some stuff, some dry P and K. You'd run some starter. How has your view of I'm going to call it cleaner inputs? How has that changed now that you're working with us?
Well, I pretty much almost have eliminated 100% of my dry fertilizer. I do use cover crops and allow them to mineralize and bring those nutrients back to the surface. So 100% of my ground has a cover crop on it, no matter if it's, after winter wheat, there's a huge cocktail mix of this and that, but I usually specifically pick each part of that cover crop mix for a certain reason, to where after corn and after soybeans, I'm kind of limited a little bit on rye because of herbicide choice and water hemp. But I rely a lot on my cover crops to help me mineralize a lot of nutrients that are in the soil and are tied up, and help bring those lost nutrients back to the surface. So I am eliminating my dry fertilizer as much as possible. Now, there is a couple transition fields that I've recently picked up that are there's still a little bit of dry fertilizer, mostly phosphorus. But the potash, if I have to do any kind of dry potassium, it's usually potassium sulfate.
Yep. Now, when you look at being able to pull back on some of those inputs, have you been able to ultimately cut rates, or what's your program still looking like? Are you pulling back nitrogen? Are you able to do any of those things?
So this year I did on a field pull back, or actually on a couple fields pull back on my nitrogen program to, I think I was around 0.7 units of N per bushel of what my average yield is. Now, in those fields, I will say I've been hurt a little bit this year because we've had so much rain, to where I believe we've had a little more leaching. I probably should have put a little bit more out there to make up for the amount that maybe leached away. But as far as my P and K, most of my P and K is going down in a liquid form with my planter. So I've pretty much eliminated the dry. Now, I have cut that back quantity wise because I'm getting more quality fertilizer that's more usable. Yeah, and it's helped me in the overall scheme of things of just the financials. It just, when you can cut back just that little bit, but yet you're getting more out of that product, makes everything that much more efficient.
Yeah. And kind of along those lines, where have you really seen your current farming operations, or even some of the achievements you've been able to do in the short amount of time that you've been working with us? Is there anything specifically? I know that it's really only been your first full year into the system, but have you already seen, or where are some of those changes that you've already started to realize?
Plant health has been the big one, long-term plant health, where before it always seemed like I was with like some of the neighbors where, right now, where their corn is starting to fire up a little bit from the bottom up. And that's where mine used to be. But now mine is holding that green a lot longer. And just overall plant health is probably the biggest thing that I've seen so far.
Yep. Yeah. And it's always difficult, because you don't have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years worth of trend line data or anything like that to show. But again, we know that you've been so successful right away that we wanted you to share your story. So along those lines, what advice would you give that grower that is still sitting on the sidelines and still listening, to the podcast or the TikToks or the Facebook, and saying, you know what, I think I can do this on my own. I don't need to reach out. What advice do you have to those growers?
I would say don't stop learning. Always be open-minded, even if right away you're skeptical or whatnot. Try it on a small scale. And I've given that advice to anybody just getting into playing with cover crops along the same lines. If you're always going to have naysayers out there, but you don't know until you try. And everybody's farm is 100% different. My farm might be totally different from my neighbor's farm, but you have to figure out what works for you on your farm and try it. Just try a little bit and just keep learning.
Yeah. And to me, that is the absolute key. I didn't know where even I would fit on, the team of a better way. And it's always interesting that you probably never expect the results when you reach out, what you're going to get. And to me, that's the biggest thing that I tell everybody when they call. They're like, well, I don't know, if I want to do this. I've been doing okay. And to me, it's like, well, you've obviously reached out for a reason. You're obviously looking for a reason. It's not going to hurt to have that conversation. It's not going to hurt for you to come to one of the 2-day events that we've got, or come to a field day, or just reach out and have a conversation. So with that being said, Rick, what kind of final advice, and maybe you just said it, if you need to reiterate it, that's fine. But what final advice do you have for the listeners out there, the one that's tuning into this podcast, or maybe it's kind of maybe it's a client of yours that you're just kind of speaking with from the heart. What final advice do you have for them?
I guess the one main thing is don't stop learning. There's always something that you can pick up, whether that is a field day you go to, whether that is a 2-day fundamentals of agronomy. Just be open-minded. And today in the farm economy that we have to keep learning, or from a business model, it's going to hurt you in the long run. So I would say just be open-minded and continue to learn would be the one advice I'd give to new people.
Yep, absolutely. Rick, thank you very much for the time today, my man. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to you. I look forward to coming up here shortly after harvest and seeing you, spending some time with you. I know last year when I was up there, I know it was the start of hunting season, and you were out running around, and I think I left at about 10 o'clock that night to head down to Illinois to do some more sampling. So looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, sounds great. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you listen to Rick kind of talk about how he was able to make his farming operation more efficient, if you would like to learn how you can decrease that cost of production, increase that yield, or just make more money, reach out. Go ahead and just say, hey, I listened to Rick. I love his story. I'm looking for help too. Where do I start? That's the biggest thing. And we'll connect with you. Someone from the team will reach out and we'll get you down the right path. I want to thank you very much for tuning in today. And as always, we hope that you have a better day.